In the buzzing heart of Lagos Island, where glass towers pierced the clouds and tech ruled men's lives, there lived a man named Obinna Ozoemena, the man whose apps built empires, whose name opened vaults, and whose wealth seemed beyond human grasp. To the public, he was a digital messiah. Forbes called him the man who coded the new Nigeria. He'd spoken at Davos, toasted with the French president, and once turned down a deal from Silicon Valley's most ruthless VC with nothing more than a smirk. But behind the blinding dazzle of Obinna's success was a secret so dark that even the night refused to speak it. At 37, Obinna had everything: a billion-dollar crypto startup, a bulletproof mansion overlooking the Atlantic, a black emoticon-grade SUV gifted by the Oyo State governor, and a Rolodex filled with presidents and prime ministers. But power, true, ancestral power, he did not possess. And that realization haunted him like an itch beneath the skin. It came to him in quiet moments, during oil massages at his Banana Island villa, while floating in his rooftop infinity pool, even as he closed Billionaire contracts over midnight jollof and champagne. There was always something missing. Something primal. Something deeper than zeros and shares. It was during a trip to Enugu, under the guise of a tech summit, that the whispers reached him. They started subtly, between sips of palm wine at a governor's cocktail party, in the murmurs of Okodo riders along Coal Camp. Names were never spoken aloud, just hints. An old man in the back alleys of Ogbit Market. A broken-toothed woman muttering to herself by a burnt-out transformer. A crippled boy who kept drawing circles in the dust. They all spoke of the same thing, a witch doctor who could untether a man from fate. They called him Dibia Okpebi, the one who sat beneath the baobab that never cast a shadow. Obinna laughed the first time he heard the tale. But the second time, he listened, and by the fifth time, something in him stirred. Curiosity. Fear. Or the quiet voice inside him that whispered, "You've built wealth, but not legacy. You've made money, but not meaning. If today your enemies rise, what shields you?" So he made the call. Obinna's private jet landed in Sokka under the cover of dusk. He came without his usual entourage. No PA. No bodyguard. Just himself, dressed in jeans and a Balenciaga hoodie, his Rolex hidden beneath a leather wristband. The air smelled of yam smoke and red dust. A battered Hilux waited at the airstrip, driven by a boy no older than 17. Okpinam, the boy said, without asking Obinna's name. They drove for hours. As the tar roads thinned to gravel and the city lights dimmed behind them, Obinna felt a strange quietness settle in his bones. He passed through towns where electric poles stood like forgotten relics and goats roamed like prophets. Where women carried calabashes with regal grace and old men sat by roadside fires, blinking slowly as if decoding the past. Eventually, the road disappeared altogether. They walked the last mile. A dirt path led into the bush, thick with night sounds, crickets, owls, frogs croaking warnings from unseen rivers. The path forked around an ancient tree so twisted it looked carved by lightning. And there, like a ghost in the fog, sat the baobab. Obinna knew it instantly. It was massive, roots like petrified serpents, trunk gnarled and cracked as if it held centuries of secrets. Its leaves shimmered, though no moonlight touched them. And true to the whispers, it cast no shadow. Beneath it sat a man. Old, impossibly old. His skin was like cracked leather. His eyes white as chalk. He wore nothing but a red wrapper and a necklace made of human teeth and cowries. Obinna approached, heartbeat loud in his ears. "I know why you've come," the old man croaked before Obinna could speak. "You want more. More than wealth. More than fame. You want command over life itself." Obinna said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Okpebi's laughter sounded like dried bones tumbling down a hill. He coughed once, spat into the dirt, and beckoned Obinna closer with a bony finger. "To have such power," the Dibia whispered, "you must first give up what follows you." Obinna blinked. "What follows me?" "Your shadow." A long pause stretched between them. Obinna glanced around. There was no one else. No lights. No cameras. Just the old man and the tree. And something in the air, thick and watching. Oktobi reached into a clay calabash beside him and scooped up white chalk. With trembling hands, he sprinkled it in a circle around Obina. The dust hovered unnaturally, refusing to settle. Suddenly, the air grew colder. The frogs stopped croaking. Even the wind seemed to kneel in silence. Tonight, the moon is at its peak, Oktobi said. You will kneel beside the Okpora stone, say your birth name backwards, and bury your shadow in the earth. That's it. Obina asked. Oktobi's face darkened. The shadow you bury is not the shadow you lose. It will hunger. It will remember. And if you forget the terms of your vow, what are the terms? Oktobi's pupils flickered with light. You must never speak of the ritual. Never return to the baobab. And never, ever, allow your heart to feel guilt. Obina hesitated. And if I do? Then your shadow will return to collect what is owed. That night, deep in the bush, beneath a sky heavy with stars that blinked like ancestral eyes, Obina knelt beside the Okpora stone, a slab shaped like a cold tongue. He closed his eyes, swallowed his fear, and spoke his name in reverse. Anumemso Anabo. The words tasted like iron. Instantly, the earth rumbled beneath him. He opened his eyes and gasped. His shadow, it was detaching. It peeled away from him like smoke unrolling from a dying fire. It twisted, snarled, reached for him like a drowning twin. It had fingers. A spine. A mouth. Obina screamed silently, the sound trapped in his chest. But he did what he came to do. He dug with his bare hands. The soil was soft, too soft. As though it wanted to receive. He buried the shadow. And when he rose, the air shimmered. The night sang in tones he'd never heard. Something inside him unlocked. He felt tall. Invincible. Unstoppable. From that day on, Obina Ozoemena's life moved like a god's dream. No deal failed. No enemy prospered. Competitors vanished, some bankrupt, others disgraced, and a few simply disappeared. He bought out his rivals before they could blink. His name triggered fear in boardrooms from Johannesburg to Singapore. His apps began predicting market swings hours before they happened. Analysts couldn't explain it. Regulators suspected insider trading. But Obina just smiled. He was untouchable. Women threw themselves at him. Political parties sought his favor. The president's son asked for mentorship. And through it all, Obina told himself it was worth it. Until, 1 year later to the day, a call came from one of his private investigators. Sir, the voice said. Your old rival, Ayrton, was found dead. Obina paused mid-golf swing. How? He asked. Strangled, by something invisible. There were no fingerprints. No signs of struggle. Just his eyes, wide open in terror. Obina leaned back in his leather chair. A cold sweat traced his spine like a warning. He stood slowly and walked over to the wall-sized window of his penthouse. Lagos shimmered beneath him, cars like fireflies, buildings like gods. And then, he saw it. For the first time in a year, he saw it, his shadow. It stretched across the floor like a creeping storm. Darker than it should be. Smiling, somehow, though it had no face. Obina backed away, heart pounding. The pact had broken. Or perhaps, it had only just begun. Obina stared at the outline dancing beneath his feet, unsure whether to scream or kneel. The shape on the floor wasn't natural. It didn't merely echo his movement, it predicted it. It shimmered slightly, like hot air above the tarred roads of Lagos in Harmattan. It moved before he moved. It twisted when he stood still. It smiled, when he most certainly did not. He blinked once. Twice. The shape remained. He stepped to the left. The shadow wavered, gliding across the Italian marble. He turned in a circle. It tilted its head. He flicked the light switch off, then on. Still there. It wasn't affected by the lighting. The sun itself seemed confused about whether to obey the shadow's existence. His mind fought to rationalize it, Maybe it was a trick of the setting sun streaming through the westward windows of his Lekki penthouse. Maybe it was the way the polished floors mirrored the ocean, distorted by the curvature of the bay. Maybe stress, fatigue, sleep deprivation, 4 hours a night, caffeine pills, a relentless calendar of boardrooms, crises, and fake smiles. But somewhere deep, in the hollow space beneath the rational surface of his mind, he knew. That was not his shadow. It had returned. The thing he buried in Okpenam under a chalk moon and trembling stars. The thing he'd given up in exchange for the crown of kings. It was back. That night, Obinna did not sleep. Instead, he sat on the edge of his California king bed, a figure carved from fear. The luxury sheets hung off him like burial cloth. His hands were clasped tightly between his knees. Eyes wide. Unblinking. Listening. Every creak. Every breath. Every sound in the darkness was no longer just a sound. Each one felt like breathing. But not his. Something else. Something near. The shadows moved unnaturally in the corners of the room. His wardrobe cast silhouettes that bent inward instead of outward. The reflection in his gold-framed mirror flickered when he didn't. At 4:22 a.m., after almost an hour of motionless silence, he picked up his encrypted phone and called his lead biomedical engineer. "Get to the compound," he said. "Now." He gave no explanation. He didn't need to. Kojo had been briefed on stranger things. By 7 a.m., they stood inside Obinna's private underground lab in Lekki Phase 1. This lab was not on any registry. Built to military-grade specifications, it sat 4 stories below ground level, soundproofed, air-gapped, and protected by biometric locks known only to Obinna and Kojo. It was where tech dreams were made and secrets buried. Kojo, a Ghanaian genius with a Cambridge degree and a face like a nervous oracle, stood beside the full-body thermal scanner. Obinna stripped to his briefs, stepped onto the scanner's glass surface, and waited. The machine hummed to life. Kojo's fingers moved over the keyboard. Lines of data scrolled across the screen. He frowned. "Vitals, perfect," Kojo said. "Blood oxygen, pulse, neural sync, all optimal." "But..." Obinna snapped, sharper than intended. Kojo hesitated. "But there's something else." He zoomed in on the live thermal feed. Shifted layers. Recalibrated. Then stepped back slowly, unease settling in. "There's a distortion," he said. "A signature anomaly. Like 2 entities occupying the same biological frame. Yours, and something else. Smaller. Colder. Shadowed, if I may say." Obinna's heart dropped. "Show me." Kojo rotated the monitor. Obinna leaned in. The image looked like an X-ray of a ghost. One silhouette glowed in soft reds and oranges, his body. Healthy. Human. The other, a faint presence, hung just behind him. It clung to his legs like smoke. Wrapped his spine like roots. Sat behind his neck like a child on a mother's back. It paused. Slowly. "Whatever it is," Kojo whispered, "it's with you. Wherever you go." Obinna said nothing. He turned to Kojo, face blank, and gave a single command: "Delete everything." Kojo hesitated. "All of it?" "Yes, sir." Within minutes, the records were purged. Backups wiped. Server logs destroyed. Kojo's retainer was doubled on the spot and he was instructed to take an all-expenses-paid sabbatical immediately. "Disappear," Obinna told him. "No contact. No trace." Kojo didn't argue. By nightfall, Obinna was alone again. He returned to the penthouse and sealed every door. Ordered his head of security to sweep the entire compound every hour. Increase camera feeds to facial recognition mode. And still. He slept with all the lights on. Curtains drawn. Bedroom door triple locked. The power generator hummed below like a lullaby made of steel and fire. Yet, at exactly 3:17 a.m., Obinna woke. The air had changed. It was no longer the humid, Air-conditioned stillness of a Lagos night. It was cold. Ice cold. The kind of cold that came from old graves. The kind that clung to your bones and whispered into your lungs. The hum of the generator was gone. The lights dimmed. And then, the whispers began. Not voices. Not words. Sounds. Ancient. Guttural. A language older than syllables. Older than meaning. It filled the walls like steam. He turned slowly, every muscle frozen with dread. And there, on the far wall, his shadow. Not beneath his feet. Not cast by light. But standing. Watching. Detached. Its arms folded. Its head tilted. Its spine arched in unnatural defiance of anatomy. Its fingers. Too long. Too thin. And its eyes, yes, it had eyes now, glowed like coal in a dying fire. Obinna gasped. His mouth opened, but no sound came. You promised me silence, the shadow hissed. Its voice wasn't one. It was many. A chorus of layered whispers. Like the wind through ancient trees. Obinna fell back against the bedpost, scrambling like a boy in the dark. I kept my vow. No. The shadow took a step forward. Its feet made no sound. Its form flickered like a broken screen. You thought you could bury me. Obinna shut himself inside his penthouse. Curtains drawn. Phones off. Security system on a continuous silent loop. Not even the lights dared flicker. Yet, silence had become a dangerous thing. It was no longer peace. It was a stage. And guilt was the actor that never missed a cue. The penthouse perched above Lagos like a throne made of glass and secrets. From its rooftop garden to its voice-activated floors, everything in the apartment obeyed him. Everything, except the shadows. And the shadows had begun whispering. Each creak in the wall whispered names. Each hiss of the air vent spoke in tongues only he understood, words soaked in old betrayals, muttered through time and space. Names once silenced were now resurrected by the stillness of the room. He stopped using mirrors. He stopped watching the news. But the shadows didn't need screens to speak anymore. Every shadow on the floor paused like a warning. They moved ahead of him. Lagged behind him. Stretched in directions that disobeyed the laws of light. He chalked it up to stress. To the sleepless nights. To the herbal pills prescribed by a nervous therapist who couldn't look him in the eye. Until it began. Each morning, he awoke to the same thing. The list. The notebook. The names. He had hidden it once beneath the floorboards, once in a titanium briefcase with biometric locks, once inside a safe encoded with coordinates only he knew. But somehow, each morning, it was back. On his desk. Open. Waiting. And names, one by one, were crossed out in black ink. His own handwriting remained untouched. The pen was still capped. The ink wasn't his. But the names. They were his victims. Ayo. Kola. Ngozi. Their names faded like they were being scorched by flame. He remembered the list. It had started as a precaution, a journal of silence. Those who knew too much. Those who had to be bought off. Those who could not be allowed to speak. At first, it was clean. Calculated. Professional. Moral lesson. Power gained without conscience is a debt paid in pain. You cannot bury guilt, it will grow. You cannot silence wrong, it will speak. And when the shadow you cast becomes the shadow you fear, it may already be too late.